Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Hare Krishna, welcome to today's reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're continuing the verse 19 of the third chapter of the third canto. Before that, we recite the glorification verses. Sarva Shastra Vip, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhantna Ratna, Sarva Lokaika Drikpradam, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kalidvanto Ditaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita, Paramananda Patnaya, Prema Vakshaksharayate, Sarvanda Sarva Sevyaya, Shri Krishna Namostume, Madhika Bandho Matsangin, Madguru Matmahadana, Manishtaraka Madbhagya, Madananda Namostute, Asadu Sadutadayin, Atini Chochataraka, Hanamuncha Kadachimam, Premna Hritkantayos Puram. Translation. A nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all of the worlds. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun reason in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. My only friend, my constant great wealth, my savior, my good fortune. I bow down to you. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O most fallen, please never leave me. Fear in my heart and my voice, pure love. Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. So today, it's Thursday, we are continuing. We had Canto 3, the status quo, Chapter 3, the Lord's pastimes out of Vrindavan, which is narrated by Uddhava to Vidura. And our verse where we are continuing today from is 19. So, translation. Simultaneously, the personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge, as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Purport. While Maharaj Yudhishthira was the emperor of the earth, Lord Shri Krishna was the king of Dwarka and was known as Dwarkadish. Like other subordinate kings, he was under the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Although Lord Shri Krishna is the supreme emperor of the entire creation, which are best called philosophy, he is the real way of enjoyment of the necessity. Without such detachment and custom, the so-called human civilization is no more than an animal society of eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy. The Lord was acting freely as he willed, yet by his practical example, he taught not to lead against the principles of detachment and knowledge. Attainment of knowledge and attachment, as very elaborately discussed in Sankhya philosophy, is the real perfection of life. Knowledge means to know that the mission of the human form of life is to end all the misery of existence, and that in spite of having to fulfill the bodily necessities in a regulated way, one must be detached from such animal life. Fulfilling the demands of the body is animal life, and fulfilling the mission of spirit soul is the human mission. 20. He was there in his transcendental body, the residence of the goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle and sweetly smiling face, his nectarian words, and his flawless character. Report. In the previous verse, it is described that Lord Krishna, being situated in the truths of Sankhya philosophy, is detached from all kinds of matter. In the present verse, it is described that he is the residence of the goddess of fortune. These two things are not at all contradictory. Lord Krishna is detached from the relatedness of the inferior nature, but he is in eternal blissful enjoyment of spiritual nature, or his internal potency. Who has a poor fund of knowledge cannot understand this distinction between the external and internal potencies. In Bhagavad Gita, the internal potency is described as the para prakriti. In the Vishnu Purana also, the internal potency of Vishnu is described as para shakti. The Lord is never detached from the association of para shakti. This para shakti and her manifestations are described in the Brahma Samhita 537 as Ananya Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhim. Lord is eternally joyful and cognizant in the taste derived from such transcendental bliss. Negation of the variegatedness of the inferior energy does not necessitate negation of the positive transcendental bliss of the spiritual world. Therefore, the Lord's gentleness, his smile, his character, and everything related to him are all transcendental. Such manifestations of the internal potency are the reality, of which the material shadow is only a temporary representation, from which everyone with proper knowledge must be detached. Okay, text 21. The Lord enjoyed his pastimes both in this world and in the other worlds, higher planets, specifically in the association of the Yadu dynasty. At leisure hours offered by night, he enjoyed the friendship of conjugal love with women. Purport. The Lord enjoyed in this world with his pure devotees. Although he is the personality of Godhead and is transcendental to all material attachment, he nevertheless exhibited much attachment for his pure devotees on the earth, as well as for the demigods who engage in his service in the heavenly planets as powerful delegated directors in the management of all material activities. He displayed special attachment for his family members, the Yadus, as well as for his 16,000 wives, who had the opportunity to meet him in the leisure hours of night. All these attachments of the Lord are manifestations of his internal potency, of which the external potency is only a shadow representation. In the Skanda Purana, Prabhasa Kanda, in the topics between Lord Shiva and Gauri, there is confirmation of his internal potential manifestation. There is mention of the Lord's meeting with 16,000 cowherd damsels, although he is the Hamsa, transcendental supersoul and maintainer of all living entities. The 16,000 cowherd damsels are a display of 16 varieties of internal potencies. This will be more elaborately explained in the 10th canto. It is said there that Lord Krishna is just like the moon, and the eternal potential damsels are like the stars around the moon. Text 22. Hey, Harima. You have it? So, chapter 3, verse 22. The Lord was thus engaged in household life for many, many years, but at last his detachment from ephemeral sex life was fully manifested. Purport. Even though the Lord is never attached to any kind of material sex life, as the universal teacher, he remained a householder for many, many years, just to teach others how one should live in householder life. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur explains that the word samajayatam means fully exhibited. In all his activities while present on the earth, the Lord exhibited detachment. This was fully displayed when he wanted to teach by example that one should not remain attached to household life for all the days of one's life. One should naturally develop detachment as a matter of course. The Lord's detachment from household life does not indicate detachment from his eternal associates, the transcendental cowherd damsels. But the Lord desired to end his so-called attachment to the three modes of material nature. He can never be detached from the service of his transcendental associates like Rukmini and other goddesses of fortune, as described in the Brahma Samhita. Lakshmi Sahasrashata Sambrama Sivyamanam. Text 23. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one, therefore, can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendental sense activities, but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service. Purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, no one can understand the transcendental birth and activities of the Lord. The same fact is herein corroborated. No one but one who is enlightened by the devotional service of the Lord can understand the difference between the Lord's activities and those of others who are controlled by the supernatural force. The sense enjoyment of all animals, man and demigods within the purview of the material universe is controlled by the supernatural force called the Prakriti or Daivi Maya. No one is independent in obtaining sense enjoyment, and everyone in this material world is after sense enjoyment. Persons who are themselves under the control of supernatural power cannot believe that Lord Krishna is not under any control beyond himself in the matter of sense enjoyment. They cannot understand that his senses are transcendental. In the Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent. That is, with any sense he can perform the activities of the other senses. One who has limited senses cannot believe that the Lord can eat by his transcendental hearing and can perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. The controlled cannot even dream of such sense activities in his but of Bhakti Yoga. He can understand that the Lord and his activities are always transcendental. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, one cannot know even a fraction of the activities of the Lord if he is not a pure devotee of the Lord. Next. Once upon a time, great sages were made angry by the sporting activity of the dynasties, and thus, as desired by the Lord, the sages cursed them. Purport. The associates of the Lord who were playing the part of princely descendants of the Yadu and Bhoja dynasties were not ordinary living entities. It is not possible that they could offend any saintly man or sage, nor could the sages, who were all pure devotees of the Lord, be influenced to anger by any of the sporting activities of the princes born in the holy dynasties of Yadu or Bhoja, wherein the Lord himself appeared as a descendant. The cursing of the princes by was another transcendental pastime of the Lord, of anger. The princes were cursed in order that one may know that even the descendants of the Lord, who could never be vanquished by any act of material nature, were subjected to the reactions of anger by great devotees of the Lord. One should, therefore, take great attention not to commit an offense at the feet of a devotee of the Lord. 25. A few months passed, and then, bewildered Krishna, all the descendants of Vrishni, Bhoja, and Andaka, who were incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhasa, while those who were eternal devotees of the Lord did not live in Dwarka. 26. Arriving there, all of them took bath, and with the water of days of pilgrimage, they offered their respects to the forefathers, the great sages, and thus satisfied them. They gave cows to the Brahmanas in royal charity. Purport. Amongst the devotees of the Lord there are several divisions, mainly Nitya Siddhas and Sadhana Siddhas. The Nitya Siddha devotee never fall down to the region of the material atmosphere, even though they sometimes come onto the material plane to execute the mission of the Lord. The Sadhana Siddha devotees are chosen from the conditioned souls. Out of the sadhana devotees, there are mixed and pure devotees. The mixed devotees are sometimes enthusiastic about fruitive activities and are habituated to philosophical speculation. The pure devotees are free from all these mixtures and are completely absorbed in the service of the Lord, regardless of how and where they are situated. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places of pilgrimage. A great devotee of the Lord in modern times, Sri Narottam Das Thakur, has sung like this: to visit holy places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord at any place is the last word in spiritual perfection. End quote. For pure devotees of the Lord, who are completely satisfied with the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there is hardly any necessity to visit the various places of pilgrimage. But those who are not so advanced have the prescribed duties of visiting pilgrimage sites and regularly performing the rituals. The part of the princely order of the Yadu dynasty who went to Brabas performed all duties to be done in a place of pilgrimage and offered their pious actions to their forefathers and others. As a rule, every human being is demigods, great sages, people in general, forefathers received from them. One is obliged to repay the debt of gratitude. The Yadus who went their duties by distributing land, gold, and well-nourished cows in charity, as 7. Not only given well-fed cows, but also gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin, seats, blankets, horses, elephants, girls, and sufficient land for Purport. All these charities were meant for the Brahmanas, whose lives were devoted entirely to the welfare of humanity, both spiritual and servants, provided them with all necessities. It was arranged for some of the Brahmanas who were in difficulty for even girls. The Brahmanas therefore had no economic problems. The Kshatriya kings and rich mercantile men provide them with all that they needed, and in exchange the Brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation of. That was the way of social cooperation between the different castes. When the Brahmana caste gradually easygoing, the society, although they had no Brahminical qualifications, they degraded themselves into Brahma Bandhus or Brahmanas, and thus other members of society also gradually fell down from the social of progressive life. As described in Bhagavad Gita, the caste system is the creation of the Lord and is arranged according to the quality of work rendered to society and not in terms of birthright, as falsely claimed in the present degraded society. 28. Thereafter, they offered the Brahmanas highly delicious foodstuffs, first offered to the personality of Godhead, and offered their respectful obeisances by touching their heads round. They lived perfectly, protecting the cows and the birds. The behavior exhibited by the descendants of Yadu of Prabhas was highly cultured and exactly to the point of human perfection. Perfection of human life is attained by following 3 principles of civilization: protecting the cows, maintaining the Brahminical culture, and above all, becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. Without becoming a devotee of the Lord, one cannot perfect one's human life. The perfection of human life is to be elevated to a world where there is no birth, no death, no disease, and no old age. That is the highest perfectional aim of human life. Without this aim, material advancement in so-called comforts can only bring the defeat of the human form of life. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas do not accept any foodstuff which is not first offered to the personality of Godhead. Foodstuff offered to the Lord is accepted by the devotees as the mercy of the Lord. The Lord supplies all kinds of foodstuff, both to the human being and to other animals. A human being must be conscious of the fact that all foodstuffs, namely grains, vegetables, milk, water, etc., the prime necessities of life, are supplied for mankind by the Lord, and such foodstuffs cannot be manufactured by any scientist or materialist in a laboratory or factory established by human effort. The intelligent class of men are called Brahmanas, and those who have realized the absolute truth in his supreme personal feature are called Vaishnavas. But both of them accept foodstuffs which are the remnants of sacrifice. Sacrifice is ultimately meant to satisfy the Yagya Purusha, Vishnu. In Bhagavad Gita 3.13 it is said, that one who accepts foodstuffs as the remnants of sacrifice is freed from all sinful reactions, and one who cooks foodstuffs for maintenance of his body takes in all kinds of sins, which lead only to suffering. The foodstuffs prepared by the Yadus at the Prabhasa pilgrimage site to offer to the bona fide Brahmanas there were all offered to the personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The Yadus offered their sincere obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. The Yadus, or any enlightened family in Vedic culture, are trained for attainment of human perfection by total cooperation of service between the different divisions of social orders. The word Uru Rasam is also significant here. Hundreds of delicacies can be prepared simply by the combination of grains, vegetables, and milk. All such preparations are in the mode of goodness, and therefore may be offered to the personality of Godhead. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.26, the Lord accepts only foodstuffs which are within the range of fruits, flowers, leaves, and liquids, provided they are offered in complete devotional service. Devotional service is the only criterion for a bona fide offering to the Lord. The Lord assures that He positively eats such foodstuffs offered by the devotees. So, judging from all sides, the Yadus were perfectly trained civilized persons, and their being cursed by the Brahmana sages was only by the desire of the Lord. The whole incident was a warning to all concerned that no one should behave lightly with Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the third canto, third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Lord's Pastimes Out of Vrindavan. Continue chapter 4, entitled Vitura Approaches Maitreya. Text 1. Thereafter, all of them, the descendants of Vrishni and Bhoja, being permitted by the Brahmanas, partook of the remnants of prasad and also drank liquor made of rice. By drinking, they all became delirious, and bereft of knowledge, they touched the cores of each other's heart with harsh words. Purport. When Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are sumptuously fed, the host partakes of the remnants of foodstuff after the guest has given permission. The descendants of Vrishni and Bhoja formally took permission from the Brahmanas and ate the prepared foodstuff. Are permitted to drink at certain occasions, so they all drank a kind of liquor, light liquor made of rice. By such drinking, they became delirious and bereft of sense, so much so that they forgot their relationship with one another and used harsh words which touched with each other's hearts. Drinking is so harmful that even such a highly family becomes affected by intoxication and can forget themselves in a drunken state. The descendants of Vrishni and Bhoja were not able to forget themselves in this way. By the will of the Supreme happened, and thus they became harsh towards one another. Text 2. As by the friction of bamboos destruction takes place at sunset, by the interaction of the faults of intoxication, all their minds became unbalanced and destructive place. Purport. When there is need of fire in the forest, by the will of the Supreme, it takes place due to friction among the bamboos. Similarly, the descendants of Yadu were all destroyed by the will of the Lord by the process of self-destruction. Just as there is no possibility of a fire occurring deep in a forest due to human effort, so also there was no power in the universe which could vanquish the descendants of Yadu, who were protected by the Lord. The Lord wanted them to be so destroyed, and thus they are order, as indicated in Tat Anu. Text. The personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, after foreseeing the end of his family by his internal potency, went to the Saraswati, sipped and sat down underneath a tree. Purport. All the above mentioned activities of the Yadus and Bhojas were executed by the internal potency of the Lord, because he wanted them to be dispatched to their respective abodes after he had finished his mission of descent. They were all his sons and grandsons, and were given complete protection by the paternal affection of the Lord. How they could be vanquished in the presence of the Lord is answered in this verse. Everything was done by the Lord himself. Svatma Maya Yaha. The Lord's family members were either incarnations of his plenary expansions or demigods from the heavenly planets, and thus before his departure he separated them by his internal potency. Before being dispatched to their respective abodes, they were sent to the holy place of Prabhas, where they performed pious activities and took food and drink to their heart's content. It was then arranged for them to be sent back to their abodes so that others could see that the powerful Yadu dynasty was no longer in the world. In the previous verse, the word Anugyatam, indicating that the whole sequence of events was arranged by the Lord, is significant. These particular pastimes of the Lord are not a manifestation of his external energy or material nature. Such an exhibition of his internal potency is eternal, and therefore one should not conclude that the Yadus and Bhojas died in a drunken state in an ordinary fratricidal war. Sri Jiva Goswami comments on these incidents as magical performances. I will hand it over to our John. Prabhu? No, but if you want to read. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Sorry, good to see you.
I'm back.
John is back. Welcome back.
Hare. Now, do we have any listeners online? Testing. Okay. So, text number 4. The Lord is the vanquisher of the distresses of one who is surrendered unto him. Thus he who desired to destroy his family told me previously to go to Badarik Ashram. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. While at the Dwarka, Uddhava was warned to avoid the distresses which were to follow the disappearance of the Lord and the destruction of the Yadu dynasty. He was advised to proceed to Badarik Ashram because there he could associate with the devotees of Narayan, and in their association of devotional service, he could increase his eagerness for chanting, hearing, knowledge, and detachment. Text number 5. Yet, in spite of my knowing his desire to destroy the dynasty, O Arindam Vidura, I followed him because it was impossible for me to bear separation from the lotus feet of the Master. Number 6. Thus following, I saw my patron and master, Lord Sri Krishna, sitting alone and deeply thinking, taking shelter on the bank of the river Saraswati, although he is the shelter of the goddess of fortune. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who are in the renounced order of life often take shelter underneath a tree. The Lord was found by Uddhav in that condition of taking shelter, as do persons who have no shelter. Because he is the proprietor of everything, everywhere is his shelter, and everywhere is under his shelter. The entire material and spiritual cosmic manifestation is sustained by him, and therefore he is the shelter of everything. So there was nothing astonishing in his taking shelter in the way of the unsheltered who are in the renounced order of life. Number 7. The Lord's body is blackish, but is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and very, very beautiful. His eyes are always peaceful, and they are reddish like the rising morning sun. I could immediately recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his 4 hands, different symbolic representations, and yellow silk garments. Number 8. The Lord was sitting taking rest against a young banyan tree, with his right lotus foot on his left thigh, and although he had left all household comforts, he looked quite cheerful in that posture. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Lord's sitting posture, keeping his back against a newly grown banyan tree, is also meaningful. Ashvatha, the banyan tree, is so called because the tree does not die very quickly. It continues to live for many, many years. His legs and their energies are the material ingredients, which are 5 in all: earth, water, fire, air, and sky. The material energies represented by the banyan tree are all products of his external potency and are therefore kept on his back. And because this particular universe is the smallest of all, the banyan tree is therefore designated as small, or as a child. Tyakta Pipalam indicates that he had now finished his pastimes in this particular small universe. But since the Lord is absolute and eternally blissful, there is no difference between his leaving the Lord to leave this particular universe and go into another, just as the sun rises on one particular planet and sets in another simultaneously, but does not change its own situation. Text 9. At that time, after travelling in many parts of the world, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord and a friend and well-wisher of the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, reached that spot out of his own perfect accord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Maitreya was one of the disciples of Maharishi Parashara, the father of Vyasadeva. Thus, Vyasadeva and Maitreya were friends and mutual well-wishers. By some fortunate accident, Maitreya reached the place where Lord Sri Krishna was resting. To meet the Lord is not an ordinary incident. Maitreya was a great sage and a learned scholar, philosopher, but not a pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his meeting with the Lord at that time may have been due to Anyata Sukriti, or some unknown devotional service. Pure devotees always engage in pure devotional activities, and therefore their meeting with the Lord is natural. But when those who are not up to that standard meet the Lord, it is due to the unforeseen fortune of accidental devotional service. Text 10. Maitreya Muni was greatly attached to him, the Lord, and he was listening in a pleasing attitude, with his shoulder lowered. With a smile and a particular glance upon me, having allowed me to rest, the Lord spoke as follows. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although both Uddhava and Maitreya were great souls, the Lord's attention was more on Uddhava because he was a spotlessly pure devotee. A Jnana Bhakta, or one who has devotion, whose devotion is mixed with the monistic viewpoint, is not a pure devotee. Although Maitreya was a devotee, his devotion was mixed. The Lord reciprocates with his devotees on the basis of transcendental love and not on the basis of philosophical knowledge or fruitive activities. In the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there is no place for monistic knowledge or fruitive activities. The gopis in Vrindavan were neither highly learned scholars nor mystic yogis. They had spontaneous love for the Lord, and thus he became their heart and soul, and the gopis also became the heart and soul of the Lord. Lord Chaitanya approved the relationship of the gopis with the Lord as supreme. Herein the Lord's attitude towards Uddhava was more intimate than with Maitreya Muni. Text 11. O Vasu, I know from within your mind what you desired in the days of yore, when the Vasus and other demigods responsible for expanding the universal affairs performed sacrifices. You particularly desire to achieve my association. This is very difficult to obtain for others, but I award it unto you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Uddhava is one of the eternal associates of the Lord, and a plenary portion of Uddhava was one of the 8 Vasus in the days of yore. The 8 Vasus and the demigods in the upper planetary system who were responsible for the management of the universal affairs performed a sacrifice in the days of yore, desiring to fulfill their respective ultimate goals in life. At that time, an expansion of Uddhava, acting as one of the Vasus, desired to become an associate of the Lord. The Lord knew this because He is present in the heart of every living entity as Paramatma, the superconsciousness. In everyone's heart there is the representation of the superconsciousness, who gives memory to the partial consciousness of every living entity. The living entity, as partial consciousness, forgets incidents of his past life, but the superconsciousness reminds him how to act in terms of his past cultivation of knowledge. Bhagavad Gita confirms this fact in various ways. Ye yata mam prapajante tamstateva bhajamyaham. Bhagavad Gita 4:11. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Everyone is at liberty to desire as he likes, but the desire is fulfilled by the Supreme Lord. Everyone is independent to think or desire, but the fulfillment of one's desire depends on the Supreme Will. This law is expressed as man proposes, God disposes. In the days of yore, when the demigods and Vasus performed sacrifice, Uddhava, as one of the Vasus, desired to enter into the association of the Lord, which is very difficult for those busy in empiric philosophical speculation or fruitive activities. Such persons have practically no information of the facts about becoming an associate of the Lord. Only the pure devotees can know, by the mercy of the Lord, that the personal association of the Lord is the highest perfection of life. The Lord assured Uddhava that he would fulfill his desire. It appears that when the Lord informed him by his indication to Uddhava, great sage Maitreya finally became aware of the importance of entering into the association of the Lord. Text number 12. O honest one, your present life is the last and the supermost, because in this term of life you have been awarded my ultimate favour. Now you can go to my transcendental abode, Vaikuntha, by leaving this universe of conditioned living entities. Your visit to me in this lonely place, because of your pure and unflinching devotional service, is a great boon for you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When a person is fully conversant with knowledge of the Lord as far as can be known by a perfect living entity in the liberated state, he is allowed to enter into the spiritual sky, where the Vaikuntha planets exist. The Lord was sitting in a lonely place, just about to disappear from the vision of the inhabitants of this universe, and Uddhava was fortunate enough to see him even at that time, and thus receive the Lord's permission to enter Vaikuntha. The Lord is everywhere at all times, and his appearance and disappearance are merely the experience of the inhabitants of a particular universe. He is just like the sun. The sun does not appear or disappear in the sky. It is only in the experience of men that in the morning the sun rises and in the evening the sun sets. The Lord is simultaneously both in Vaikuntha and everywhere within and without Vaikuntha. Text number 13. O Uddhava, in the lotus millennium in the days of yore, at the beginning of the creation. I spoke unto Brahma, who is situated on the lotus that grows out of my navel, about my transcendental glories, which the great sages describe as Srimad Bhagavatam. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The explanation of the Supreme Self as given to Brahma and already explained in the second canto of this great literature is further clarified herein. The Lord said that the concise form of Srimad Bhagavatam, as explained to Brahma, was meant to elucidate his personality. The impersonal explanation of those 4 verses in the second canto is nullified herewith. Sridhar Swami also explains in this connection that the same concise form of the Bhagavatam concerned the pastimes of Lord Krishna and was never meant for impersonal indulgence. Text 14. Uddhava said, O Vidura, when I was thus favoured at every moment by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and addressed by him with great affection, my words failed in tears, and the hairs on my body erupted. After smearing my tears, I with folded hands spoke like this. Loving service of feet. Purpose. Those associated with the Lord in the Vaikuntha as Lord Vishnu. Such liberation mukti, which is one of the 5 kinds of liberation. The devotees engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord never accept the Sayuja Yog Mukti, or merging in the rays of the Lord called the Brahma Jyoti. The devotees can achieve not only liberation, but any success in the realm of religiosity, economic development, or sense gratification, up to the standard of the demigods in the heavenly planets. But such a pure devotee as Uddhava refuses to accept all such facilities. A pure devotee wants simply to engage in the service of God and does not consider his own personal benefit. Excuse me. Number 16. My Lord, even the learned sages became disturbed in their intelligence when they see that your greatness engages in fruitive work, although you are free from all desires, that you take birth, although you are unborn, that you flee out of fear of the enemy and take shelter in a fort, although you are the controller of invincible time, and that you enjoy householder life surrounded by many women, although you enjoy in yourself. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Pure devotees of the Lord are not very much concerned with philosophical speculation in regard to transcendental knowledge of the Lord, nor is it possible to acquire complete knowledge of the Lord. Whatever little knowledge they have about the Lord is sufficient for them, because devotees are simply satisfied in hearing and chanting about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. This gives them all transcendental bliss. But some of the pastimes of the Lord appear contradictory, even to such pure devotees. And thus Uddhava asked the Lord about some of the contradictory incidents in his pastimes. The Lord is described as having nothing to do personally, and it is actually so, because even in the creation and sustenance of the material world, the Lord has nothing to do. It seems contradictory then to hear that the Lord personally lifts the Govardhan hill for the protection of his unallied devotees. The Lord is the Supreme Brahman, the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead appearing like a man. But Uddhava had doubts whether he could have so many transcendental activities. There is no difference between the personality of Godhead and the impersonal Brahman. How then can the Lord have so many things to do, whereas the impersonal Brahman is stated to have nothing to do either materially or spiritually? If the Lord is ever unborn, how then is he born as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. He is fearful even to Kala, the supreme fear, and yet the Lord is afraid of fighting Jarasandha and takes shelter in a fort. How can one who is full in himself take pleasure in the association of many women? How can he take wives and, just like a householder, take pleasure in the association of family members, children, relatives, and parents? All these apparently contradictory happenings bewilder even the greatest learned scholars, who, thus bewildered, cannot understand whether an inactivity is a fact or whether his activities are only imitations. The solution is that the Lord has nothing to do with anything mundane. All his activities are transcendental. This cannot be understood by the mundane speculators. For the mundane speculators, there is certainly a kind of bewilderment, but for the transcendental devotees, there is nothing astonishing in this. The Brahman conception of the absolute truth is certainly the negation of all mundane activities, but the Para-Brahman conception is full with transcendental activities. One who knows the distinctions between the conception of Brahman and the conception of Supreme Brahman is certainly the real transcendentalist. There is no bewilderment for such transcendentalists. The Lord himself also declares in Bhagavad Gita 10.2, even the great sages and demigods can know hardly anything about my activities and transcendental potencies. The right explanation of the Lord's activities is given by Grandfather Bhishmadev, Bhagavatam 1.9.16 as follows: Na hyasya karhichid rajan puman veda vidhit satam yad vignas ya yukta muhyanti kavayopihi. That was a big one. 17. O my Lord, your eternal self is never divided by the influence of time, and there is no limitation to your perfect knowledge. Thus you are sufficiently able to consult with yourself, yet you called upon me for consultation, as if bewildered, although you are never bewildered, and this act of yours bewilders me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Uddhava was never actually bewildered, but he says that all these contradictions appear to be bewildering. The whole discussion between Krishna and Uddhava was meant for the benefit of Maitreya, who was sitting nearby. The Lord used to call Uddhava for consultation when the city was attacked by Jarasandha and others, and when he executed great sacrifices as part of his routine royal work as Lord of Dwarka. The Lord has no past, present, and future because he is unhampered by the influence of eternal time, and thus nothing is hidden from him. He is eternally self-intelligent. Therefore his calling for Uddhava is to give him enlightenment is certainly astonishing. All these actions of the Lord appear to be contradictory, although there is no contradiction in the routine activities of the Lord. Therefore it is better to see them as they are and not attempt to explain them. Number 18. My Lord, kindly explain to us, if you think us competent to receive it, that transcendental knowledge which gives enlightenment about yourself and which you explained before to Brahmaji. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A pure devotee like Uddhava has no material afflictions because he engages constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. A devotee feels afflicted without the association of the Lord. Constant remembrance of the Lord's activities keeps the devotee alive. And therefore Uddhava requested that the Lord please enlighten him with the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, as previously instructed to Brahmaji. Text number 19. When I thus expressed my heartfelt desires unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lotus-eyed Lord instructed me about his transcendental situation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The words Paramam Stithim are significant in this verse. The Lord's transcendental situation was not even spoken of through Brahma when the 4 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam 2:9:33-36 were explained. This transcendental situation comprises his dealings with devotees engaged in transcendental loving service, as exhibited at Dwarka and Vrindavan. When the Lord explained his specific transcendental situation, it was meant for Uddhava only, and therefore Uddhava particularly said, Mahyam, unto me. Although the great sage Maitreya was also sitting there, such a transcendental situation is hardly understood by those whose devotion is mixed with speculative knowledge or fruitive activities. The Lord's activities in confidential love are very rarely disclosed to the general devotees who are attracted by devotion mixed with knowledge and mysticism. Such activities are the inconceivable pastimes of the Lord. Text number 20. I have studied the path of understanding self-knowledge from my spiritual master, the personality of Godhead, and thus, after circumambulating him, I have come to this place, very much aggrieved due to separation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sri Uddhava's actual life is the direct symbol of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam enunciated first to Brahmaji by the personality of Godhead. These 4 very great and important verses from Srimad Bhagavatam are particularly taken out by the Mayavadi speculators, who construe a different purport to suit their impersonal view of the monism. Here is the proper answer to such unauthorized speculators. The verses of Srimad Bhagavatam are purely theistic science, understandable by the postgraduate students of Bhagavad Gita. The unauthorized dry speculators are offenders at the lotus feet of the Lord Sri Krishna because they distort the purports of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam to mislead the public and prepare a direct path to the hell known as Andatamisra. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 16:20, such envious speculators are without knowledge and are surely condemned life after life. They unnecessarily take shelter of Sripad Shankaracharya, but he was not so drastic as to commit an offence at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. According to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sripad Shankaracharya preached the Mayavad philosophy for a particular purpose. Such a philosophy was necessary to defeat the Buddhist philosophy of the non-existence of the spirit soul, but it was never meant for perpetual acceptance. It was an emergency. Thus Lord Krishna was accepted by Shankaracharya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his commentation on Bhagavad Gita. Since he was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, he did not dare write any commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam because that would have been a direct offence at the lotus feet of the Lord. But later speculators, in the name of Mayavad philosophy, unnecessarily make their commentary on the Chatushloki Bhagavatam without any bona fide intent. The monistic dry speculators have no business in the Srimad Bhagavatam because this particular Vedic literature is forbidden for them by the great author himself. Srila Vyasadeva has definitely forbidden persons engaged in religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and finally salvation from trying to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, which is not meant for them. Sripad Sridhar Swami, the great commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, has definitely forbidden the Salvationists or monists to deal in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is not for them. Yet such unauthorized persons perversely try to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, and thus they commit offences at the feet of the Lord, which even Sripad Shankaracharya dared not do. Thus they prepare for their continuation of miserable life. It should be particularly noted herein that Uddhava studied the Chatushloki Bhagavatam directly from the Lord, who spoke them first to Brahmaji, and this time the Lord explained more confidentially the self-knowledge mentioned as the Paramam Stetim. Upon learning such self-knowledge of love, Uddhava felt very much aggrieved by feelings of separation from the Lord. Unless one is awakened to the stage of Uddhava, everlastingly feeling the separation of the Lord in transcendental love, as exhibited by Lord Chaitanya also, one cannot understand the real import of the 4 essential verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. One should not indulge in the unauthorized act of twisting the meaning and thereby putting himself on the dangerous path of offense. Does anyone know the 4 shlokas?
It's 2, 9, 33 to 36.
Yeah.
Yeah, we learned in Bhakti-Vaibhava, but
Memory doesn't serve you well.
I'm not in that field at the moment.
Yeah.
So
I must actually look at that and see what they are later.
yeah. It's like Bhagavad Gita has Chatushloki.
Mm.
You know which one?
10, 9, is it 9 or 10?
10, 8,
10, 8, 9, 10, 11.
10, 11, yeah. So same as the Bhagavatam.
9, 33 to 36.
33.
Okay. Okay, one last one. 21. My dear Vidura, now I am mad for want of the pleasure of seeing him, and just to mitigate this, I am now proceeding to Badarik Ashram in the Himalayas for association, as I have been instructed by him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A pure devotee of the Lord of the standard of Uddhava constantly associates with the Lord in the double perception of simultaneous separation and meeting. The pure devotee is not for a moment unengaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. Execution of the Lord's service is the main occupation of the pure devotee. Uddhava's separation from the Lord was unbearable, and therefore he started to Badarik Ashram in obedience to the Lord's order, because the order of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical. As long as one is engaged in the execution of the order of the Lord, there is no factual separation from him. So always be engaged, and you'll be sorted. Always be engaged, right? No messing around. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much.